Hi there. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic.
Congratulations on everything that has happened this summer. You've had a lot of things. You hit you hit the ground running. Was it on time with the launch of the app and the funding? I mean, how does it sort of feel from your end?
Well, it feels wonderful to finally have our initial product in the marketplace, Midday, our app for menopause and healthy aging that we developed in collaboration with top experts at the Mayo Clinic and technology experts at SRI International. So, when it's almost like being pregnant and having a baby, and there's like that 9 months of anticipation, right? And you really want to be able to hold your baby and have everybody have that experience of interacting with your baby, right? So now it's out in the wild and we're getting just tremendous feedback and about filling the void in menopause, with a truly tech-enabled solution, which we can talk about a little bit later. But also really bringing this evidence-based and science-backed approach to menopause as well, which has been a big gap.
Well, I'm sure you looked at all of the apps on the market and spotted that none of them really did it, right? Like none of them really did. And it's amazing. Like when I look at this app, when I was sort of thinking of launching Hot Flash back in 2018, I was thinking there needs to be an app. I was like talking about all the stuff that you've done, but of course have absolutely no idea how to do it. But I was like, none of the apps have enough symptoms. Like they don't really seem to do much other than track them, but I couldn't put all of the symptoms and they just seem very limited to me. And then when I look at what you've got, I mean, it's pretty amazing. So I'm just sort of wondering, when you set out to do it, like what was your intention? Like what did you want to give women, and did you consult women and did they say we're not getting this?
Well, I think we have to turn the clock back a bit and probably maybe start a little bit about the origin story. So I have been a senior executive in the healthcare technology space my whole career. And so I've always used advanced technology to improve patient outcomes and access to care for very complex conditions. Along the way, led the development of some of the earliest tech-enabled products for high-risk pregnancy, preterm birth, fertility. So when I decided to start my own company, I was more interested in what was happening to women 40 plus, because it was really more reflective of where I was at. And just diving into the space, just you couldn't help but notice that menopause was a massive market and B, incredibly underserved, right? And it just coincided with my own menopause transition. And then all of a sudden overnight, I just had all of these symptoms pile on. It felt like it was somebody flipping a switch for me personally. And I know every woman is different, which is something that technology, I think, can understand and appreciate. But I just had like the typical experience that, pretty much all women have, that doctor visit that was disappointing. They really didn't know much. Going to Dr. Google and Facebook and, not getting good information and no technology solutions in the market. So I just thought, wow, this is crazy. There's 3.8 million women on this planet. We are all going to go through this life stage. And my fundamental belief is that the only way to truly create transformational change for the menopause journey is with technology, because very few physicians are actually trained in menopausal care. We're not going to, unfortunately, be able to adjust for that, anytime soon. And there's a lot of other reasons, but, sort of the short way to think about it is, this is just like the perfect use case for digital health technology to step in, because, every woman pretty much has a smartphone and they know how to use it, right? It's Gen X women, right? Primarily who are in the more, I always say, like kind of the more acute phases where the symptoms are highly bothersome and then they're actively seeking relief. So why should we as midlife women be left out of the technology trend, the technology party, so to speak?
I think it's crazy that you were in this field, again, another person sort of lost and going to the doctor, you hear the same stories over and over.
Yeah, right.
Like,
And it's like,
yeah,
if it's this hard for me, and I'm
I
this super
know.
knowledgeable and empowered healthcare consumer, like, what is this like for the average woman? And then I went, and obviously then I had many, many conversations, did lots of surveys. We had a beta platform where we had thousands of women use. So, it was just the patterns were so consistent around, women feeling blindsided, feeling dismissed, feeling unacknowledged, I mean, the list goes on, and we need to flip that. Like,
Yeah.
we need to completely transform this experience.
So I'm just curious, how did you tackle your own experience? Like, how have you meandered through that path?
Well, because I develop complex products for a living in the healthcare space, I did this deep dive into the literature because, I always come from a place of creating solutions that are evidence-based and science-backed. And so the first place to start is the literature. This sort of the second place is to then go talk to the top experts and partner with the top experts. I think that, I've always believed for decades that, really the only way to create the kind of transformational change for patients, right, improving patient care, is to partner with the people who are providing that care. Because if you don't, if you're trying to kind of force a technology solution on healthcare clinicians and other people within the healthcare industry, it's very hard because it can be disruptive to their workflows and other sort of, and their training and so forth. So it's really actually important to work together to bring solutions to market so that it meets the needs of everyone, for the patients, for the clinicians, for the scientists, the researchers. Everybody can collaborate together for a better, stronger solution.
What did you, when you were working with these women, I mean, it seems to me that there's so many commonalities between symptoms, but then there's so many symptoms, and people have, I mean, it's like our experience is universal, but it's not. Does that make sense? Like, how do you wrap your head around that when you're developing technology?
Sure. Well, you use deep talk. You need, a lot of data. You need data science techniques, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So all the things that we're using with our Midday app, those are the things that are going to fundamentally, help us understand what's happening with women's symptoms at a, deeper physiological level. And when you can understand that, and then you can reveal that to the user in a way that, is friendly and makes sense, then you can deliver these targeted therapeutic strategies. I mean, I think today what happens, we see it all the time, is women just go through these years-long cycle of trial and error, right? Just desperation, right? I'm just try this, without really understanding, the underlying symptoms that they have. And what will work best for them. So we're trying to use technology to really get women to a place of understanding and relief much more quickly than what happens today.
So, one of the things that we'll do, when I was just doing a little bit of research, is it'll tell you how many hot flashes you're having, when you might expect hot flashes, and what are some of the factors contributing to the hot flashes. So can you just walk me through the AI part of it, like how that just works? Like, talk to me like
Sure.
on 5, but just how we go from I'm having hot flashes to this is how many you're having, this is when you're going to have them, and this is why you're having them.
Sure. Well, hot flashes, it's the number one symptom of menopause that 80% of women will have for 7 to 9 years. We used to tell women, oh, they'll be gone in a few months, a year, maybe 2 years, but we now know that they last much longer. And no woman should have to endure that degree of, uncomfortable existence for that long. So we developed some novel technology. It's an AI powered algorithm that can detect and predict hot flashes with over 90% accuracy. So it's not in this version of the app. It's actually coming in the near future. but we basically use commercial wearable technology. So just, whatever wearable you have, to be able to detect that hot flash and then alert you as a user. And so then over time, as your hot flashes are being detected, we can then see patterns and say, well, Anne Marie, you're 80% likely to have a hot flash, between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. And if you've been inputting your triggers, like the things you think are causing your hot flashes, then we can start to associate, well, gee, you have that cup of coffee, right? that hot beverage and caffeine. Or for me, I know, for example, if I've had some red wine with dinner, I can pretty much guarantee that, you're going to be hot flashing in that later part of the evening, right? So you can start to understand these patterns. And then when you can do that, so remember I said, like, you need to kind of get to the root cause or the root of the symptomatology. That's when you can then start to recommend the kind of therapeutic strategies that would actually work. So, if it was stress, for example, a lot of women, stress and anxiety are triggers of hot flashes, particularly in the work setting. And so if you know that, then now we can deliver therapeutic strategies. It could be mindfulness or hypnotherapy, which has a lot of evidence that it provides relief for hot flashes. It could be cognitive behavioral therapy, also has a high level of evidence. But a woman might want to explore hormone therapy, which, depending on where you're at in this journey, you may be eligible for hormone therapy. And we have an algorithm in the app that was developed actually by top experts at Mayo Clinic that helps women understand if hormone therapy is right for them, and then can connect them to a virtual care visit with a Mayo Clinic expert.
Okay, perfect. And I was just thinking that if someone could come up with a red wine that didn't give you hot flashes, that will sell. I think all these people are coming up with products. And I actually had a hot flash on a flight recently when I spilled a glass of red wine. I had a hot flash. So it was like a neat little juxtaposition between wine and stress.
Yes, because it was probably the embarrassment of like, oh gosh, I just spilled some wine on a plane and my seatmate is, looking at me, glaring at me, like, oh,
yeah,
what are you doing?
But we don't get this kind of insight, right? How about all the numbers of symptoms? Because, this is one of the things that endocrinologists told me, just stop trying to count because there's so many, but people really do like to know about the symptoms. So how does it capture symptoms? Because I know when I looked at previous apps, they only had 60 or 45, and it just felt like I always felt like I'd want to put in my own and track them that way, but I could never find an app that would do that.
Right. Well, there's not perfect agreement on how many symptoms are actually related to menopause. There's always the sort of the number that gets thrown out about 34 symptoms, but you're right. They're in innumerable combinations. They change over the stages. And so it's really hard for women to get an understanding of that. And that's why we're the first actually to use wearable technology to help detect, some of these symptoms so that women don't have to enter them, right? Because, some women are highly motivated, but others over time, they get a little bit of fatigue about having to go and input information, particularly on a daily basis, which actually isn't necessary for a lot of symptoms. For some, it's helpful, but for others, like they're not really going to change that quickly in response to whatever therapeutic solution you're using. So I think a good example of that is vaginal dryness. The first line recommendation is usually an over-the-counter moisturizer and lubricant. So you start to use that, maybe you might see some relief fairly quickly, like within the first week or two, but there's not really a strong need to sort of track that on a daily basis, right?
You're aware when things are.
Yeah, but also, you just know that you've got to make this easy on women, right? Not an extra thing they have to do every day. So like, how can we be more clever about checking in with women and doing it at the time that makes sense rather than just this kind of like log everything every day, right?
Yeah.
And then I also think the value we're trying to deliver to women is to then interpret those symptoms for them and give them insights. I think, a lot of other products out there you log, but then they don't tell you anything about it. So you have to sort of look at whatever information they might be giving you and try to figure out how that applies to you. And so we're actually using data science techniques to remove that burden or work from the user.
As you've been planning this, have the wearables sort of been advancing to the point where it helps you do it? Like, I know I was just on a call for the latest Apple Watch, and I don't know if this is new, but they were going on and on about a temperature for fertility. And I was thinking, oh, like I have one. I haven't started using it, but I thought it must track hot flashes. I don't know if I don't know why they're not selling that. I don't know why they're not promoting that. No, it doesn't.
Well, the wearables are getting better and better all the time. And I think that's a benefit to all of us, particularly as we're aging and we take more accountability for our own health. And we're able to get more data, right? Again, just on our wrist or on our phone. What's important is to make sense of it, right? So, are these wearable companies, analyzing and presenting this data in a way that's actionable? Because if it's not, it's like, well, who cares, right? It's got to be actionable. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to take this really, I think, valuable data about your health and your menopause symptomatology and make it useful and actionable. Because I keep stressing at the end, you want relief, right? Just getting this information and saying, oh, I have, 30 hot flashes today. Okay, well, what are you going to do about that?
But yeah,
right?
You're bothered by hot flashes, so you have 30. It's almost worse, like if you don't have a solution for it.
Right. It's like, no, we've got to then go to where the real value is and deliver a solution that is personalized to that woman, that caters to her preferences. There's a broad range of therapeutic strategies that are available. I think we need to make sure that we're guiding women towards those that are evidence-based and science-backed, or at least safe and not harmful. I mean, a good example of that, I was at the North American Menopause Society's annual meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they had a half day on vasomotor symptoms. So basically hot flashes and night sweats. And there was a presentation on, what's the latest evidence for the behavioral strategies for managing hot flashes. So the very top, or best strategies, cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy has the most evidence. And then at the bottom of the list, like having the least evidence, was things like yoga and exercise. So, okay, there's not much evidence. Like the evidence seems to indicate that it doesn't help. But in that instance, I would say there's so many benefits to exercise. Like, it's undisputed that exercise and yoga have tremendous benefit. So even if they're not necessarily relieving your hot flashes, there's still good things to do, right? It's still good for our health to engage in those. But we wouldn't necessarily say to a user, like, okay, you're having hot flashes, do yoga. We could say that's, if you want to do it, go for it. Maybe it'll make you feel like you're able to better manage those hot flashes, because it generally creates a sense of calm. It relieves stress and anxiety, which actually may, in an indirect way, help those hot flashes. But if you really want to holistically lower the severity and frequency of those hot flashes, you should engage in hypnotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. And then if you want to explore hormone therapy, like, let's do that. There's a lot of misinformation out there about it as a therapeutic strategy. And I think it's important for women to get the right information and a personalized understanding of whether or not it's going to work for them and what the options are.
What is the right information, though? Because honestly, it feels very confusing. I'm a journalist. I'm used to sort of peering through this, but I see a lot of hysteria and a lot of fear driving sales of hormone therapy, right? Like fear about future diseases and fear about what happens if you don't go on hormone therapy, which always makes me suspicious, right? When people are using fear to sort of sell something, but then there is really good evidence about hormone therapy. But then, you know what it's like. it causes breast cancer. It doesn't cause breast cancer. The risk is high. The risk is like minuscule. It's just very hard to like cut through all of it. I guess what you're doing is going, how do you know that how do you know it's being parsed correctly is what I'm saying. Like, this is what my struggle is, like, normally when I was reporting on something, when I was in the newspaper in Canada, I would speak to several experts. I would read the thing myself, and I would have, that's how we would decide. And you would find experts on both sides and sort of one in the middle. I don't know. How do you, because this work, science is subjective. It's always changing. It depends what the intention was. It depends how the study was done. Like, how do you and let me know, because I need help.
Well, the top experts and researchers, of course, have spent a lot of time correcting the misinformation and misunderstanding around the studies that were done, the WHI studies that were done decades ago, which unfortunately scared a lot of women and clinicians. Clinicians were telling women to, taking them off of their hormone therapy and not prescribing. So it's not just been, trying to dispel the myth and the misinformation around hormone therapy for women. It's also been for clinicians. Again, going back to that, less than 7% of residents feel comfortable treating or talking about menopause with their patients. We have a job to educate both. We rely on the North American Menopause Society. They just published their latest position statement in 2022 for menopausal hormone therapy. Obviously, they've had the top experts who have reviewed all of the studies, of which there have been many studies, very high quality studies that have been done in the last couple of decades. And then, of course, we have a relationship with the Mayo Clinic and the top experts at the Mayo Clinic. Now, again, we think it's important for women to understand for them individually, what's the risk benefit, and have shared decision-making with a clinician. But you need to try to source an expert, right? And you can do that through physician finders on the North American Menopause Society website. There's also physician finders on the British Menopause Society site and the Australasian, and there could be others. And so I know it's hard. It's hard for women to find these experts, these certified menopause practitioners, but they're out there. And then we think, actually, again, the power of technology, right? If you have an app that has a science-backed algorithm that's been developed by top experts that can help you understand your risk benefit, that is very empowering. It puts that power and knowledge right at your fingertips. So if you are struggling, and I think a lot of women around the world probably will, to find a trained clinician, then you've got technology that you can go to that's affordable. Think about these healthcare deserts, not just, here in the US where I am, but around the world, right? There are many parts of the world where women don't have access to good healthcare services. But they must likely have a smartphone, because smartphone penetration right now is over 85% worldwide.
Yeah.
And I know from working, volunteering with different populations of women, that oftentimes it's the first bill they pay, because it's the lifeline. It's like a lifeline for them.
Mm-hmm. So where do you think we're going with tech? Like, okay, first of all, do you think we'll have like menopause specific wearables? I know there's a bracelet that does a cooling thing. Is there going to be a menopause applications in the metaverse? Like, where could we take this in your wildest dreams?
Well, certainly if somebody wants to create a wearable specifically for women over 40, they could, but it's a rough road. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Hardware is hard. It's very hard. And so we believe that, the mainstream wearables like your Fitbit, your Apple Watch, Garmin, Samsung, they're really, or Ring, they're really good. And they're doing the hard work, right? That's their area of expertise. And we're getting more and better biomarkers from those wearables all the time. And so I think from my perspective, let's let them do the thing that they're really good at and rely on that. But at the same time, put pressure on them to pay attention to midlife women's health and menopause and make sure that they're prioritizing that on their product roadmap so that we're companies like us who are taking that data and contextualizing it and making it meaningful for women over 40, that we are able to get data that is aligned with some of the top concerns that women have, like cardiovascular disease, for example, #1 killer of women by orders of magnitude. Many women, it's interesting, they're really, really concerned about having breast cancer. And granted, you might have a particular risk factor because of family history or something else. Totally get that. But for the average woman, like say me, who has none of that, I should be more worried about cardiovascular disease. Like definitely do my breast exams, my self-exams, my mammograms, like no question, because you want to have early detection and you want to minimize your risk of cancer. But wow, like that is not at the top of my list of things for me to be concerned about as I age. Like not anyway, I wouldn't even say it's in my top 5. And I would really love if women, really better understood the types of chronic disease that they're more at risk of and addressing those. And again, yes, doing your preventative care for all the other stuff, but you just need to understand like what you're really at risk of.
Well, and understanding that it's not, you hear heart disease and it's just so far off, right? I had a funny doctor in my 40s and I was quite health anxious because I had all these weird symptoms. And she said, people are always so scared of cancer, but if you get heart disease, like you could be dead within a year. And I was like, great. But
you could be dead without even like,
right.
I unfortunately, know people who have had an untimely death and no warning signs. I mean, I guess really they were there, but, they weren't being picked up. And so I think that it's important to to go to your doctor, get a baseline on, your heart metrics, and then, really engage in lifestyle behaviors that are going to help lower that risk. I mean, there's definitely medications and some people need to be on those, but, I think the medical community is pretty well aligned now in their thinking around, lifestyle matters, right? And lifestyle can lower your risk. Lifestyle can actually reverse some of these chronic conditions that we have. So rather than relying on medication to manage it, and you might have to do that for a period of time, like really double down on a healthy lifestyle, even well before you might think you are in sort of the danger zone, because we are seeing that young people in their 20s and their 30s are already have the signs of heart disease, right? So we need to be ringing the alarm bell about things like this and getting women activated around it.
Yeah, because there are those people that have no warning signs and whatever, but there are, understanding the links between insulin resistance and how that all plays out. And I mean, even just there's indications from the research that a lot of hot flashes and severe hot flashes could be some sort of indicator of issues, some sort of signal that cardiovascular disease could be much more of a factor. And so, it always, since I've gotten in this, it's always bothered me when people are just like, oh, hot flashes, ha, ha, ha. Because if you're having really, really bad hot flashes, more than one person has said, I think it's a signal. And there's the research there to show that
there is. I mean, they just presented the latest paper on that at the North American Menopause Society annual meeting. So we do know now that menopause symptoms, that some of them are linked to chronic disease. There's still a lot more research to be done. We don't quite know exactly what's happening, or at least from my understanding of literature, the jury is still a little bit out on exactly what's happening, but we do have research that's underway, particularly on around the link between hot flashes and cardiovascular disease. And at a very minimum, menopause symptoms will exacerbate, chronic disease and sort of make that much more difficult for women. So last year at the annual meeting, there was a presentation by Dr. Cynthia Stunkel, who's like one of the top experts in menopause research and clinical care. And the title of her presentation was "Lifestyle is the silver bullet." Oftentimes we say things are not, they're like, there's no silver bullet. And she was very, very clear and emphatic and passionate that engaging in healthy lifestyle behaviors, so, exercise, right? Preferably vigorous, a super healthy diet, mindfulness, right? Like reducing the stress and anxiety, like those things matter. And I think we all of us who are doing work in this field wish that women would take that to heart, those messages to heart, but also understand that, yes, we're all busy, like we get it because you're like juggling all this stuff. But we need to start to prioritize our health, right? Like it's always taking a back seat to everything else we've got on our plate, but we need to start moving stuff off the plate. Like I, for example, had a conversation with my husband a few years ago, like, look, you need to start taking more accountability for, our household activities and, things of that nature. Now it was my fault because I was just by my nature, the one who was like doing everything.
Yep.
But I understood, I sort of had to step back and understand that that was not like good behavior on my part, and that it should be a 50-50 partnership. And so he absolutely has stepped up and has taken more accountability, and that's now in turn has freed me up to have a little bit more, I kind of call it more me time, but to be able to ensure that I am able to have the time to do the things that I need to do to ensure my health and well-being.
Well, I'm interested to hear you say that, because I always think this time of life is about that too. Like just you having the ability and the courage or whatever to say that needed to be said. And this is why I don't like talking about silver bullets, except lifestyle is a silver bullet. But, it's not gonna, hormone therapy can be very, very helpful, but I worry that it takes up too much of the conversation, because hormone therapy isn't going to have that conversation you needed to have with your husband. It's not going to have, like those things also need to happen. And I think, there is evidence that if you don't speak your truth, if you don't have the conversations that you need to have, if have a disconnect within yourself, that it, that can also cause problems. Like that can also create problems.
Sure.
So it's interesting to hear you say that, because that's just, you might think that's it's huge though for you in your relationship if you hadn't said that.
No, it's huge. And we actually say like, you need to have the conversation, right away. Like as soon as you're starting to experience symptoms or changes, or, don't wait, because it's only going to get worse. It's only going to create more problems in your relationship. And it's not going to give you sort of the kind of support and relief that you need. And it's not just with your husband, it could also be with your children. We always hear all the time that mom's crazy, right? Or right. Or even maybe you're caring for elder parents. I've seen those situations where women feel like, oh, I'm just kind of snapping at my parents, and right. So the conversations need to happen probably with a lot of people, but they should start with your partner first. And I think because a lot of women, like we're used to doing a lot and it's hard for us to give up control, we have to be able to transfer control for a lot of things, but then also to not be critical of how that stuff gets done.
You nailed it though, because we don't want to give up control because it won't be done to our standards. I remember when my friend was first married, and her husband was taking care of the kids, and she went out one night and she came home and the kids were safe in bed and had their dinner, but the house, the wet towels on the floor and all that. And I remember her saying, he said, I must just be exhausting to be you. Like, the kids are in bed.
Mhm.
I got busy, and I think at that point in time, she learned a lesson. Like, okay, it's not going to be done exactly the way I would do
Exactly.
it. But we have a
Exactly.
lot of responsibility for that. We don't
Mhm.
want to give that up. We're not used
Right.
to it. And I do, like, do you think this adds harm at this time? Like, do you think this makes it harder?
Absolutely. I mean, I think as women, we need to recognize that this is a very complex life stage. There's, a lot of change that's happening, and we should not go it alone. Like this whole, like, I'm just going to stay silent and suck it up and be stoic, while you're having this, incredible turmoil, and, it's potentially debilitating on your health and your well-being. Like, why are we putting ourselves through that? Like, just like everybody needs to be educated, right? Everybody, younger people, men, our parents, like, we all need to acknowledge that, this is a transformational time of change for women, and we can navigate it. I firmly believe that we can navigate this, quite successfully, and it should be something that we actually celebrate and take, like, we just get joy out of it, right? But I think that's hard to do if you don't have, like, your team, right? And I think you need your team, and you need your, what I call your Thrive Kit. And I've written articles about this, about all of these things, right? You just, like, need to take a step back and say, what do I need from a support perspective, self-care perspective, in order for me to best make this journey?
Isn't it a little bit like isn't it a little bit about just deciding you're worth it, though? Like, having that worthiness. Like, for me, I know it's been a lot of that, of just saying, like, I'm worth this. Because I don't know, it's a value. The trip to self-worth is different for everyone, but I believe for me, it's been huge, of just saying, no, I'm worth taking responsibility for myself. I'm worth spending the time. I'm worth having these conversations. Like, did you have that at all too?
I don't know if I thought about it quite that way. I think it's an interesting perspective. I think I just felt that, at this stage of my life, there's just so much I want still to accomplish, so much, I just want to be in incredible shape, incredible health. I just don't want to feel out of control, which we hear a lot from women, or that, they don't feel like they can, kind of keep pace with what they want to do. So for me, it was just around quality of life. And maybe that does get to sort of this, like, I'm worth it kind of thing
Worth
that
it.
you mentioned. But we definitely are. I think we just believe, like, oh, we'll just keep powering through it. We'll be fine. And I question, really, is that enough? Like, to just be fine? I don't think it is. It's not enough for me. So I think women need to say, hey, that's not enough. I want more.
I want more. I love it. How are you feeling now? Do you experience symptoms? Where are you at?
Well, it's funny, because I like to say that I'm donating my hot flashes to science, because we do so much research in this area, along with, many symptoms, sleep disturbance and mood changes, that I certainly was very interested in the opportunity around hormone therapy and having that relief from hot flashes. But since we do a lot of research, it's actually been beneficial for me to keep having them. And it's really helped me gain, I think, a very connected and deep perspective on the experience of hot flashes, because I really, really had to think about it. And I don't know how to maybe expand on that. But, really understanding, sort of, I don't know, do you have hot flashes, or have you had
I
hot
do.
flashes?
Yeah, I have them occasionally. I haven't
Yes.
Yeah. They either worse when I'm stressed and I'm tired and I'm busy. That's when I
Right,
know I'm having them. But
right.
I don't have very many, maybe one a day or one every couple days.
Right, right. But really trying to understand sort of the physical manifestation of it, and then also the things that trigger it, and the things that make it better. So I know for me, even though I said a few minutes ago that exercise, there's not a lot of evidence that exercise is beneficial for hot flashes, but I actually think for a lot of reasons, exercising every day is like really, really important to my well-being and reducing my stress, my anxiety that I never had before. I think that's something that's new for a lot of women, and we don't talk about it enough: anxiety and depression, the mental health aspects. But things like that really help to lower that and create this sense of calm. So then you do see, at least for me, that, I'm less likely to have hot flashes. Paced respiration, which doesn't have a lot of evidence, but again, it's another sort of stress and anxiety diffusing technique. We do in the app have hypnotherapy. And if you need to, like, that cooling relief in the moment, or to teach yourself how to get that cooling relief, we have that strategy, which is really beneficial, which helps you sort of visualize yourself in a cold environment, and sort of it's this like little brain trick that actually works for a lot of women, which is excellent. And then behavior modification, right? So if you know that red wine is a trigger, then maybe you dial back on that, or at least
Yeah, for a couple of years.
Which I think, just having knowledge is super helpful. So you go, okay, well, if I'm at this party and I'm having red wine, right? Do I want to have hot flashes at a party or not? Maybe I'll have something else to drink.
I've actually stopped drinking red wine. I don't want it, because it just, not only does it give me hot flashes, it really messes with my sleep. Well, any alcohol too close to bed will just mess with my sleep. But it's almost like, when I used to just be like, oh, I would love to dive into a yummy, warm glass of, but now I don't have that feeling. I have a more of a like, sort of like a food that, it's not going to make you feel well. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's like a human sort of protectant. And I'm not alone, because I've heard even celebrities say, and red wine seems to be, again, if someone wants to make a red wine that we could drink, that would be absolutely fantastic.
I agree.
Yeah. What would you want for research? Like, what would your dream be to spend for people to focus on?
Well, so from the beginning, I've been very passionate that this is not just about, for me and the solution we're building, it's not just about helping to manage menopause symptoms and delivering those insights, which I think is really important, but to lower women's risk of chronic disease much earlier than when it's typically acknowledged. I think we really need to get ahead of it. By age 55, an alarming 80% of women have at least one chronic disease, and 50% have two. Like, that is just, it's just alarming, and it's unacceptable. And so I think we wait far too long to really understand women's risk. So for me, I would like to see an acceleration of the research around the link between menopause symptoms and chronic disease, but also just in general, chronic disease, and, when and how that manifests for women, and how we can deliver more and better preventative care earlier in this journey.
Oh, I know one thing I wanted to ask you about the app. I noticed that it places you in the phases of perimenopause, like the 4 phases. You don't hear about that a lot. You don't hear, because like the way people talk about it's like, oh, it could be 10 years, but really there are distinct phases. And I think your app tells people where they kind of are. And if you're in the I feel that I'm in the last, it's sort of comforting to just know where you are. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you do that?
Sure. Yeah, so we have the feature to assess women at where they're at in the journey, but on a more granular level than what is typical. So the 3 stages are, premenopause, perimenopause, postmenopause. But we go a little bit deeper than that into early perimenopause, late perimenopause. It's a science-backed algorithm. It's highly granular, very accurate. And we can then track women's progression towards menopause. So a couple things we heard over and over and over again is, where am I at in this journey? Like, because I think the terminology is confusing, but also women get a lot of misinformation, even from clinicians, because the way that the criteria is set up, it's, you're not in perimenopause until you're having menstrual cycle irregularity. But we now know by recent research that symptoms are happening much earlier. And unfortunately, a lot of women are getting dismissed and saying, no, you're not in perimenopause. It must be something else. And so unfortunately, we're not, I think, effectively educating and giving them the help and support they need. But we're really changing that with this science-backed algorithm. And it's meant to prevent women from feeling blindsided as well, right? So now you know where you're at. You're tracking every month. And so what your progression is towards reaching menopause, which is for most women, 12 consecutive months without a period that's not due to some other reason. And I think that's really empowering, right? I mean, it's just, now we can we can deliver the right kind of education at the right time, so that you're not sorting through all this stuff and trying to think, well, what applies to me? What doesn't? I don't really know where I'm at. Now we're able to deliver very targeted education about what to expect, whether you're premenopausal, early peri, late peri, and then finally postmenopausal.
Where I hear it's pretty nice over there. So
yeah, I love it.
You're there. You can report
for sure.
the other side.
Yeah, I am definitely there.
Okay. And the air is nice and the water's clear and
for sure. I mean, I'm not going to say that I didn't have my little period where it was like, oh my God, like it was hard. But I guess I just approached it from like, I am not putting up with this for a minute. Like, I'm going to figure this out. And then once I did, I'm like, okay, I'm going to transform this for 3.8 billion women, because women should not have to go through this. We deserve so much more, so much better for a life stage that should be the most rewarding and enriching and joyful of our life, when we're at the peak of our powers. Hopefully you've got kids that have gone off, and you really are able to really focus on you, and doing the things that bring you joy on a daily basis.
It's all coming together. Okay, love it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll put the information in the show notes and everything. Okay.
Well, I hope that was good info. Yeah, it was a pleasure. I have to jump to another call in like a minute.
No problem. I'll let you go. I've kept you long enough, but keep in touch and let me know what you're doing or whatever.
For sure. If I'm ever in your part of the world, I'll look you up.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.